What were your thoughts? How is it? And now that you watched it and preparing for this, Derek, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I feel like I've always known about this film's existence. And I mean, look, they've made 7 of these things as recently as 2018, which is just, I don't even know how. I still cannot fathom how someone wanted to make that many of these. But yeah, so I've always known that the Leprechaun has existed in some form or fashion. I don't think I've actually seen the original in a very, very, very long time, up until recently, obviously. And so much so that I completely forgot that Jennifer Aniston starred in this movie. Like, she showed up and I was like, wait, what? Like, I completely forgot that this was like her second movie ever. But yeah, so I think where I'm really mostly familiar with it is with things like Leprechaun in the Hood. Like, that's right around that 2000s mark is, and that's the memeable one. Like, anytime you see a Leprechaun meme with this specific one, it's almost always from Leprechaun in the Hood. So yeah, I've always known it, but I've never, I think, actually sat down in any sober capacity and watched this movie from start to finish.
Yeah, no, I think we all need to watch this again, but sloshed or high out her ass.
Yeah. There's just no way to make it go down easier. Like, it's just.
No. Well, Jordyn, where did you first come in contact with this, and how do you feel now?
So this was one of those things where, when I was a young wee lad, my dad used to show me horror films when I was really young and scare the shit out of me. And this was one of them. And, as a kid, you don't necessarily... Okay, hold on, rewind. As a queer kid, you don't necessarily remember Jennifer Aniston being beautiful, gorgeous, and the, pop culture icon that she is, right?
Well, this is before her nose job, so...
Right, and this is before Friends. Yes. Let's be real. Well, this is before all of this had happened.
This is literally her second feature film ever. Yeah. She is a nobody, which is why she's starring in Leprechaun.
Right. And then you don't remember the hunk where you're like, I don't remember that, right? I just remember staying up late at night with my dad, watching this midget, and forgive me, little person, right? Rolling around, just tearing people's eyes out, saying, you need to give me my gold, you need to do this. And it scared the shit out of me. So my early on introduction to Leprechaun was being scared the shit out of by Leprechaun and thinking that this little thing was going to come and attack me while I'm in bed, right? The covers aren't safe, closet isn't safe, nothing is safe. And so that was my early on introduction to it. And I never saw it again until 2 days ago. And then I watched it and I was like, this is literally the worst movie I've ever seen. A. B, how the fuck was I scared of Willow? How in a million years was I scared of Willow? And just the whole, the kitschy, the corniness, the everything, which we'll get into, right? That was my early introduction to Leprechaun. Was I was scared the shit out of Leprechaun, and now I'm like, fuck this asshole. He can die and it's fine. But yeah, like Derek said, there's been plenty of iterations after this original one, and so I feel like those are more memorable than this movie was. So
yeah, no, I completely agree with both of you. Much like you, Jordyn, I watched it when I was super little. It was around the time that I was watching all those horror films like Nightmare Before Elm Street and Night of the Living Dead and everything. So this one was just thrown in there. Scared of him because, it is a good costume. I do admit that. The costuming is cool for the Leprechaun, but I was afraid of him. Watching it this week was a struggle because it is so bad. It is so bad. I had to watch it 3 times in order to actually watch the entire movie because I just kept zoning out of it. So that was rough. It would just go on and be like, what's on TikTok? Yeah, no, definitely a pain to watch this. not what I remembered whatsoever. I do remember Leprechaun in the Hood, just because now they played on the funny with all the later iterations that they did of the 7.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we all remember. But getting to that, and I think we all have the same consensus, our popcorn ratings. Derrick, we'll start with you on this one. Actually, Jordyn, we'll start with you on this one, and we'll follow suit.
So, sorry, I'm choking because I probably picked the wrong popcorn lesson. I definitely I went with a 1.5 popcorn rating, only because watching it was nostalgia. And it reminded me of just watching movies with my dad and like the horror movies, and like he showed me this, and you know, I was genuinely scared as a kid like watching this. But I think this is probably the lowest rated thing that I've done on this channel, only because it is so horrible. Like, it is horrible. You have Jennifer Aniston, you have like the like cut off like shirt like hunk, and it's like, okay, fine, like, or hot, whatever. And like you get introduced to in like the first like 10 minutes of the film, you're like, okay, fine, like whatever, we know you're going to be there for whatever. And then you have like the comedic relief, like I hate this, like the fat dude, like comedic relief, right? Like that's who you are, with his like henchman, his like little like 12-year-old henchman, right? And like the comedic relief is like the kid from A League of Their Own who's like, you're gonna lose, when he's like older. And like I was like, oh my god, like this is just so cliche. And I think, but to be fair, like I think this is the 90s version of like a very like, how do I put it, like a very like just like it's that cheesy horror film, right? Like it's that, right? And that's what it did in the early 90s for it, right? And I feel like if it was anything like Donnie Darko or something different, it would be a different rating. It would be a different conversation we'd be having. It would be very different. And so I feel like this was like, it was meant to be the way that it was. And it was meant to be as corny and as like just god awful, you know, that it was supposed to be. So, but it definitely is a 1.5 out of 5 for me, just because like, I'm like, yeah, this movie wasn't it. It didn't do it for me. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't it.
Yeah, nope. I see where you're going with that. Derrick, what is your popcorn rating?
God. So I went with a 1, and it's only purely because of how shocked I was that Jennifer Aniston was in this movie. And look, I know that she looks back on it with embarrassment, and she's gone on record to say like it's one of her worst roles. And but it's, what's funny is like she's still very much Jenny A. Like there's a like there were a couple of moments there where I was like, oh, that's that comedic timing. Like she's always had that. And you know, so she's, as bad as the film is and as bad as the film makes her, I think now in a retrospective, you can kind of see that like, okay, yeah, there's a reason why she's the star that she became. Not just because she got Friends, but you can see how what she does here, how that transitioned into getting something like Friends. She's got a lot of potential. She has a lot of magnetism. Like she's very, even if the script or the film isn't doing her any favors, you can see that she's got potential. So my 1 is purely for that. And then nothing else. I'm usually pretty forgiving for things like 90s tropes. I very much recognize, just with how many films I watch in a year, and just like I understand kind of like the editing and the camera work and the storytelling of just how we do early 90s movies. And so those things don't bother me too much, because that's just a pretty standard way that the 90s did. And obviously we've improved upon it. And you can see it just in like line delivery and editing shots and how they kind of piece movies together. A lot of 90s films do this, even good ones do a lot of those similar things. My biggest issue with this movie, and there are a lot of them, but this one I think kind of starts all the branches. Like this is kind of that base root, is that this film does not know what it wants to be. In any regard. It doesn't know if it's a horror comedy. It doesn't know if it's a comedy horror. And it like from one scene to the next, it just tonally shifts back and forth, where, you know, one scene you have Warwick Davis as a leprechaun chasing somebody in a wheelchair through an empty hospital, which is just like, what is happening to him just clawing the face off of a police officer, but also in a go-kart? Like, okay, whatever. Like, there's just no cohesion to this whatsoever. Like, the way the movie starts and the way the movie ends, like, nobody can if you didn't watch anything in the middle, nobody can convince me that they're the same movie. Like, no. At all. Like, at all. By the time you get to that final well battle to whatever he's doing in this house originally when he first starts, like, you cannot convince me they're the same movie, because they are not. And that is how tonally confused this film is. And I just could not get over it. Like, it was just too much. So yeah, this one's bad. This one's really bad.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the tone of this movie. Completely all over the place. I had to popcorn rate it a 0.5 because it is so bad. The only reason it got 0.5 for me is because of Jennifer and Warwick Davis, because I do like Warwick Davis. But other than that, this was, like I said, had to watch it 3 times to get through it. It was a pain to watch. But actually, touching base with what you said, Derrick, and what you said, Jordyn, there was reasons why it was all over the place and all of that. Mainly, Trimark, which was the production company that put this out, wanted it to be a horror movie, like our horror movie and everything like that. But Warwick Davis and Mark Jones wanted to be a critter film, like Gremlins and everything like that. Yep. So they were actually fighting for this comedic horror movie, which like Gremlins was, but TriStar didn't want it. They wanted more horror. So that's why it's all up in the air and jumping around and very confusing. I'm surprised they even released this film, to be honest.
What I'm even more surprised about is that this movie was made on like $1 million budget. This movie made $8 million at the box office. $8 million at the box office. Like, however you adjust for inflation, that is an insanely profitable movie. Like, that is nuts to me.
Well, and the other fact of it is this was Trimark's first movie that they bankrolled pretty much.
Yeah.
So they went crazy with the marketing on this to make sure people went and saw it. So I think that's why it was so successful. Why there are 6 others, I have no idea, but there are.
I can't believe there are 7 in total, which just wow.
Wow. I have to go back and watch the newest one to see if the bad still holds up.
I'm tempted to do the same, actually.
So I will say, like, in that year, in '93, there was so many like horror films that came out in that year, right? Like, you had Leprechaun, which was like the boom, like that's the horror film that came out in that year. Then you had things like Hocus Pocus. You had things like which weren't necessarily like scary, right? Like you had like The Good Son, and you had like Man's Best Friend, and then you had like the sequel to the Amityville Horror, which like nobody fucking like saw, right? Nobody knew. And so no wonder why this movie, like, which is, you know, like the horror film of the year, right, like did so well, is because all these other ones were like, you have a family film, you have all these other films that weren't like necessarily like up to the caliber of like, let's say like The Exorcist or, you know, Amityville Horror that came up. So like there's no secret like why this kind of like made like it did make a lot. They did make a lot for like the, you know, from what the budget is, but like like all the other films that came out in the year, you're like, oh well, you know, it's not like Nope and then like, you know, some obscure horror film that just came out, right? Like, of course it's gonna, you know, make as much as it did. So
total side note, and there's no valid reason for this, but I love The Good Son. I adore that movie. I'm not even going to tell you that it's good, but there is nothing better than watching a mother drop a child off a cliff to choose which son she liked better. Like that is peak ending. Like that is, you do not have a better climactic ending than that one. That is phenomenal. I love it so much. But anyways, that's not what we're talking about.
Well, perfect. We're actually now going to transition into The Good Son. So
yes. Woo! I knew I did the right double feature. Perfect.
Wait, do you also like Mommy Dearest?
Yes, I do actually.
Thank you. Yes.
I do.
Okay.
That one's more for comedic value, and I love movies that get panned for just overacting, and it's so those ones are way more fun than whatever the hell this is.
Oh yes, no, completely agree. Those ones are way more fun, plus better written than this movie.
Yeah. Although I will say that this movie, were it a better movie, this line would slap way harder. But fuck you, Lucky Charms. That is one of the I was like, dude, why can't you just put this in a much better movie? That is a fantastic line. That is a fantastic catchphrase.
I mean,
it's so good.
Was just terrible in this movie. It was.
I know.
I was like, really?
In that alone, Mark Jones basing this whole entire movie off of the Lucky Charms guy. That line had to be in this movie. Like literally, that was his whole basis on writing this movie. Was he wanted an evil Lucky Charms character?
What was his name?
Mark Jones?
No, the Lucky Charms dude.
Oh,
he had a name.
He does have a name.
Okay, I'll look it up. Continue.
I'll look it up. Okay. So, right before I look this up, I am going to break down the storyline for you guys.
Yeah. Oh, there's a storyline?
We're not going to go. There is. According to IMDb, there's a storyline. We're not going to go see my scene because I'm pretty sure all of us would kill ourselves with a pot of gold if we did. But okay.
His name is Lucky the Leprechaun. Boo. Anyway, moving on.
But okay, so the storyline, based off of what IMDb says, it says when Dan O'Grady returns to the U.S. after stealing some Irish leprechaun's pot of gold, he thinks he can settle down and enjoy his newfound wealth. He thought wrong. The leprechaun followed him, and O'Grady barely gets away with his life. Having locked the little monster in his basement, 10 years later, JD and his spoiled daughter Tori move in. By accident, the leprechaun is released, and almost immediately, the annoying creature starts to look for his gold, not displaying any respect for human life. That is the whole breakdown that they say this movie has, which is pretty accurate. I feel like they focused on O'Grady a little bit too much because he wasn't actually in it that much. But
that is such a bizarre cold open, by the way. Like,
yeah, right.
It is. It's weird.
It's a weird cold open.
No. What do you think about the story that they tried to do, or what even IMDb says they tried to do? What do you think? What do you think could have improved? Well, lots of things, but what were your worst parts, and what did you love the most? We'll start with you on this one, Derrick.
Yeah, I think again, totally that imbalance makes it really hard to kind of say to really make any valid comments about the story because it does shift around so much. So like. For me, I feel like, picking one or the other really allows this movie to be, it elevates it just in either way, so if you were to lean into the horror aspect of it, it'd be fine if we spent more time with O'Grady because now you can explain the mythology of the leprechaun a lot more. And that initial impact of seeing him, you'll understand that he actually did come from Ireland. You'll get how he got the gold. You'll get when he comes back. And then, when you go visit him in the hospital or whatever, like you can have that creepy old man scene. Like there's so many different things that you can do if you just play it up as a straight horror. So in that kind of story, I think, sorry, my eyes like watering right now. So in that kind of story, I think if you do like a straight horror, then based on that narrative, you have a lot more afforded to you to add in some of those scares and actually stick to that actual story, right? You're not so focused on creating this comedic value. Now, on the flip side of that, when you want to talk the story, by adding that comedic overtones, you lose all of that narrative competency, right? Like anything that would make this movie cohesive in any way, all of that just goes out the window because now it's just all punctuated by just some of the most ridiculous batshit crazy stuff that has no reason for being here. Like the go-kart, the tricycle, the shoes, the wheelchair, you're just like, where is all of this coming from? Like, it is so, and then because you're playing up this camp, but you don't really know what you're doing with it, and then you're also trying to do this horror thing, everything that I still don't understand what the Leprechaun does. Like, I don't understand his powers. I don't understand his purpose. I don't understand his strength level, because that changes all the time. I have no idea what he's capable of and what he's not capable of. Like, nothing is through lined here with this main character. And so having this just bizarre story that's kind of fragmented by these different tonal shifts, it just makes it really difficult to invest and stick to that story. So I do think that the biggest thing that you can do is just pick one or the other. That's why things like Leprechaun in Space, Leprechaun in the Hood, those ones do fare significantly better. I'm not going to say that they're necessarily good movies, but they're infinitely more enjoyable because they just pick one. Like, a Leprechaun in Space is already absolutely ridiculous. Like, that's just already funny from the get-go. So you don't have to explain anything. It's just a Leprechaun in Space. All right, pop an edible. Let's go. Like, have a shot and let's have a good time. Like, it's so inviting because it's so ridiculous, but it knows that it is. And this one just, with that synopsis, none of that comes across because you can't balance it out. So,
yeah, no, right there with you, Jordyn. What are your thoughts on this story that it had?
So I feel like the Leprechaun in this entire film was just a little bitch, and I will give my explanations why. From the jump, like, this dude got the fucking thing of gold fair and square. He was like, I found it, like, finders keepers, and that's the rule. And then this motherfucker comes in and is like, no, I want my gold. And I'm like, bitch, you lost it. Like, you lost your fucking wallet in Uber. Like, you don't get to, like, call the Uber driver who's had, like, 5 fucking people in the place after you who may have took your pot of gold and then it said, I need my fucking money back. No, you lost your money. Like, that's it. Bye. Like, there's no, like, we didn't have to go through all this whole story. Like, right. You could have just been like, you know what? Fine. Let me, like, create my own gold. And then he's like counting it. He's like, I'm missing a coin. Look, take the L. Like just you have 99 coins, but one in a fat person's stomach is not gonna, like, make your thing, right? No, this dude was like, nah, I need all my coins. And so, like, just the basis of it, I'm like, like, just go. Like there's no, right? Like, and that's my thing. Like, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, you're just spoiled. Like, you just want your thing back. I think just generally, I do have to agree with Derrick. Like, it was camp to the point where it could have worked in a lot of ways, and you needed to pick a way that it could have worked. But instead you were like, no, I'm going to pick 4 different, like, branches, and then it's just going to spiral out. And it just didn't work. It didn't work in a lot of ways. It didn't, like, why was the kid there? Why was this dude there? Like, why did he have to eat the coin? Why was Jennifer Aniston there? Why did she need the hunk to be like, oh, like, and then there's like this little, oh, and you're like, what's going on? And then they're like in a hardware, like, it's everywhere, right? And then, you know, his injury didn't fester, and I wanted it to fester, right? Like, it just, things were just going all over the place. And then it was like, oh, the only way you can do it is to kill him with a 4-leaf clover, and the guy just, like, shoots it down his throat, but he's still alive, right? Like, it doesn't kill him. It's like, it's just, he's still alive. And, you know, and the fact that there's 7 after is like, okay, he's not dead. Clearly he's not fucking dead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, you know, just watching it, just base level, like, not remembering most of it, only remembering this dude that was going to attack me because I stole some fucking, like, gold, like, shit. It wasn't tracking. Like, I didn't I was like, like, it didn't hold me. It wasn't like a campy horror film. You know what I mean? Like, it could have just been a really good film, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and I agree, Jordyn. There's like 5 movies all happening at once. Like, you're just like, I don't know which
Like,
one I'm supposed to be watching. Like, which movie
is
am I
this-
actually watching?
Is this Dead by Daylight? Is this Resident Evil? Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
What's happening?
No,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you too. The story for me, and like for you too as well, it's just all over the place. I
Yeah.
think it's because since Trimark was trying to make this their like first big thing coming out there, and Warwick Davis hadn't done anything since Willow,
yeah,
and Mark Jones really hadn't done anything. They were all trying to prove something, and they threw a little bit too much into that pot of gold, and it just made it a fucking mess. I'm going to pause for a second because we do have a chat. Q in the chat says, hello, everybody. He is sorry for running late, but he is here. He said, I remember this movie and I watched it and I thought, oh my God, this is the most certainly crazy, insane horror movie for St. Patrick's Day. Which, yes, but Q, we want to know your popcorn rating now because you missed it. Jordyn rated it a 1.5. Derrick rated it a 1, and I gave it a 0.5 because we think this movie is trash. But I do want to touch base on all the, like, we keep mentioning Jennifer Aniston.
Mm.
What did you think about this cast? Like, it was a B cast. I think it's like the best cast that they could have possibly found in 1993.
Sure.
But what did you think about this cast? Do you think there could have been better? Do you think they could have just left characters out completely? We'll start with you on this one, Jordyn.
So obviously there's better characters that could have like done this film, right? Honestly, for the way that the film played out, I think it was not perfectly cast, but I was like, who else are you gonna get, right? You have like Sarah Jessica Parker, you have like Kathy Najimy, and then you have like Bette Midler doing Hocus Pocus, right? Like they're doing the film of the year. Like they're doing the film, like they're doing that, right? Like you're not gonna get those type of people in this fucking film, right? You're not gonna get like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're not gonna get like you're not gonna get those people, right? Like for this film. And I feel like obviously, Jay Ann was like starting out her career in this and like, oh cool, like this is what's going on. And the Hollywood hunk is very forgettable in this film. I'm like, like you're hot, but like I'm gonna forget you in like 2 seconds because you fucking went out and you got your fucking like calf slash. Like I'm not impressed. I think mostly obviously it's like Jennifer Aniston and the Leprechaun that were like the most memorable out of this film. And the kid, yeah, okay, you had that one line, but it could have been utilized better. It could have been in another movie that it could have made a better impact. You're gonna lose, guy. I was like, fine, you were the comedic relief, but it would have probably been fine if you weren't there, right? Like, so I think overall it was the best they could do. Obviously they could do better, but I with the casting, I have no qualms.
Derrick, I'm going to throw the same question at you, but then I also want to see what your thoughts are of like the actual directing of this, like how they shot it, their locations and everything. What do you think of like that? And do you think they could have done better on that?
So 3 things. So 1, fun fact, the 2 highest rated films out of this entire franchise are the most recent one in 2018, which holds a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Leprechaun in the Hood, which goes to 30%. All of the rest of the films are single digits and below. Like, it does not get better after this, guys.
I gotta see Leprechaun in the Hood. I'm like kind of
There's
intrigued.
2.
There's 2 of them, by the way.
2. Leprechaun back
to the hood. Yeah, he goes back. That one doesn't fare as well. It's wild.
God.
So I acting, casting, whatever, like it. Tropes are fine. I mean, we used to do wild shit in the 90s.
Yeah.
When you watch 90s cinema, and especially when you kind of watch some of these earlier ones, like in that because so most genres in music, film, whatever, they don't actually go from 1980 to 1990, right? They go from like 85 to 95. So when you think of the 80s, it's 85 to 95, and then 96 to, that's the actual era that you remember. So this one is really more 80s than it is 90s, but it's like right in that cusp of the shift. And so, the fact that like you have a kid who's paired with a mentally disabled person, which is the joke. Like, we don't do that anymore, like for good reason, but like that is the joke. Like, the joke is that he's slow. Like that's that, and we just used to do that in the 90s, and like it was fine. Like nobody cared. So I mean, there's casting is just so like nobody matters in this movie. Like no one. Like there's no one that you remember. There's no one that does anything that's like worth remembering. Warwick Davis, he's clearly having a good time. Like he's the only one that's having a good time in this. Like nobody watching it or like even people making it, like there's no way in hell anybody else is having as much fun as he has. Again, that wheelchair scene, it looks like he could not fucking wait to barrel down that hallway. Like it's like something he's always wanted to do and never got a chance to do it. Like he is so excited about it.
He's so
Funny enough, there has been interviews, and he did say he was super excited to do that.
I fucking knew it. I knew it. You could just see it. Like he's not acting. He is having so much fun doing this. But yeah, like I mean, outside of him and Jennifer Aniston, again, like I said up top, like Jennifer Aniston, I think she's not good here, but you can absolutely see why she's really one of the only ones out of everybody that has like a legitimate career and has, kind of skyrocketed into stardom, why she got some of those other things. And there's, I can't even remember what the lines are, but there's that scene at the dinner table or the dining room table where, she's about to grab the shotgun or whatever. And somebody says something and her like quickness of cutting them off or like shutting them down. I was like, oh, that's Jenny A. That's that could be like, she's always had that. So I mean, casting wise, yeah, it's clearly like they got people for next to nothing. And, they, these people probably got paid as much as extras, even though they have speaking lines. So, casting wise, whatever, it's fine. Warwick Davis is really the only one you'll remember outside of Jenny A. Direction, you can definitely feel that push and pull, right? Like you can tell that there's a studio telling them to do one thing, and then he's trying to do another thing. And they're doing it not just in the same movie, but sometimes they'll do it in the same scene. And you can just feel that dichotomy, and it does not work. Like it is infinitely disjointed. And I think that this desperate their desperate attempt to try to include both of them at the same time and not just relent and just say, hey, we'll make a comedy in the sequel, or we'll make a horror in the sequel, or whatever. Like they don't do that. So them trying to do both as a director, you can tell, like, I make that joke, but I really do think that this was not enjoyable to make. I can't imagine he had a good time making this movie because of how difficult it must have been to constantly push back on every studio note that this has to be scarier, this has to be gorier. And then you've got Jones and Davis that are like, let's just be stupid. And like, direction wise, there's a lot of 90s editing going on. And it wouldn't be as noticeable if the movie was a little bit more through-lined and kind of like the story that you recapped. If it was much more along those lines and it didn't have all this other stuff, I think the direction would probably be fine, and I could forgive a lot of that 90s editing trope stuff that they do. But because it's just everything in this movie, man, every time it cuts, it's a different movie. Like it is constantly changing, and that it comes out in that direction. And you can tell, like, there are probably moments where he just threw his hands up and he's like, you guys deliver the lines however the fuck you want. Like, I don't care. Like, it's
well, like even with like the sheriff scene or like the police scene, like I saw that and I was like, why did you put that in there? And then you just like rip his, like, just There, like, for what? For what? Like, you didn't need that. You know what I mean? So, like,
yeah. I mean, Warwick even said in an interview, he was like, "We went and reshot so many scenes to make it more horror that after they were already finished filming the entire movie, they went back and filmed those scenes to throw back into the movie." So that's why it's so disconnected. But I was gonna say that for directing and everything, it reminds me of one of those like Mary-Kate and Ashley like movies that they used to come out with in the 90s. But the Mary-Kate and Ashley movies at least had more storyline than this movie did, but same kind of directing.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
But another from Cue Ball, he did give us his popcorn rating. He says, he says he gives it a 4 out of 5 popcorns.
What?
And he says, I agree with that. The story could have been better with each character connected to the story, and the pacing was a little slow, but it was a unique horror movie at the time. So we have a 4 out of 5. Don't know how.
No, you clearly misread the heading. We're not doing Leprechaun in the Hood. We're just doing Leprechaun. You recount your stars, recount your popcorn buckets, and lower that shit. That is egregious at best.
Now, we are running out of time, but I do want to touch base on and get your guys' mind frame on how in the world do you think they were able to do 7 sequels? Because we have Leprechaun, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun in Space, which is actually not that bad. Leprechaun in the Hood, which is good. Derrick keeps saying. Leprechaun Back to the Hood. Leprechaun Origins, which actually goes back and explains where Leprechaun came from. So I have to watch that. That came out in 2014.
That one holds a 0%, by the way. So just proceed with caution. Most people don't invest in Rotten Tomatoes, but just trust me. I did a whole year of watching 0% movies on Rotten Tomatoes. 9 times out of 10, they're very accurate. Yeah.
And then we have the most recent one, Leprechaun Returns.
So it's a 50%, by the way. 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Just FYI.
With how bad
one?
Yeah, this one that just
the most recent one, and apparently it's about Tori's daughter.
Oh,
yeah.
Always the sequels.
Yeah. But with how bad this movie obviously rated on Rotten Tomatoes, and then like how we feel about it, how do you think they were able to even convince people to keep watching these? Like, Derrick, go ahead.
They didn't. It's very clearly painted. Like, this movie made more money than it ever should have. So that signaled to TriStar to be like, oh yeah, no, we got this. Like, let's make another one. They made another one. It was awful, and all the rest of them, or at least until Hood, the last two, so 3 and 4, they went straight to video. So those are, I mean, they're literally tax write-offs at that point. Like, they're costing next to nothing. They're making money on these things because they're not investing in them actually, and they're just putting stuff on the shelves. And when you look at like 3, 4, and even 5, which I know had a theatrical release, but 3 and 4, when you look at the world of Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and things like that, like, you get money for practically putting in nothing because people are renting these movies, and they don't know anything about them. So maybe they like the first one and they skip 2 and they go to 3. 7, I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer. I can explain like the first couple, but man, once you get into space, that should be the end of your franchise. Like, anytime someone goes to space, that is a signal that everyone involved knows we're jumping the shark, and everyone involved knows that this is going to be the end. So what do you do when you reach the end? You go to the infinite. Like, that's the movie goal. Like, that's how all of them do it.
That didn't stop it with Jason X. They still came back with Freddy versus Jason. So.
That is true. Freddy versus Jason, I'm going to give an exception because that was a blast. I know people hate that movie. That's another one that I will put as a guilty pleasure. I love Freddy versus Jason.
Q came back and he says, by the way, he is standing by his rating because he is neither high nor drunk. So that is fair, Q.
Wow.
But yeah, Jordyn, do you have any thoughts on how possibly you could think on how they made this?
So I'm looking at Leprechaun Returns, right? And it's like that was a very staple of like the late 2010s. What
Mhm.
okay, so IMDb says Leprechaun returns once again when a group of girls unwillingly awaken him after they tear down a cabin so they can build the sorority house.
What?
Every fucking movie in the late 2010s is about some fucking cabin in the woods,
Yep.
some sorority fucking house, some frat house, something. What I did last summer, all that stuff, right? Which is why it did so well, and which is why I think like it gets like 50% or better, right? Like, and I feel like, and so Derrick, I feel like this is a product of its time, right? Like, it's a product where it fed the right amount of like angst and the right amount of like camp for people to be like, I want to buy into this. Like, there was no film that was coming out that year where it was like, oh, well, it's like Nope versus some other horror film, right? Like where it was like you had to choose, right? Like where it was like Alien versus Predator versus like Haunting in Connecticut, right? Like you didn't have to choose. Like this was the film that like came out, right? And so like you went and saw this, which is why it fucking probably did well, right? Like it was the only fucking film that came out, during the early, early 90s, 1993. And so it's no wonder that they made seven after this because you're right, they capitalized off of this film, which did so well, and they had the money to do seven, right? Like after, right? Like, and even though they didn't stop in space, which was the fourth one, right? Like they continued
Yes,
after this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I definitely am gonna see like 2018's like Leprechaun Returns, right? Or like Leprechaun in the Hood, right? Which is like the black African American version of like Leprechaun,
It's
which is
so
probably
good.
why
It's
it did
so
so
good.
well.
It's so
good.
good.
Right. And like
It's
I
so
want to
good.
watch it, right? And I feel like it gave, or how we would say it was giving back then. And
Yeah,
I feel,
let's give it.
yeah, and yeah, it was giving camp, and I feel like it gave the right amount of camp, not this film specifically, not Leprechaun, but it gave the right amount of camp to propel itself into all these other like six sequels that came after. And even though two and three didn't do well, four did great, right? And then here comes fucking like Leprechaun Returns, right? And so I don't know, like as much as I like and like, yeah, this fucking film is stupid. It definitely paved the way for other great films to come after it. I mean, not great films, right? Like, but I'm just saying like other sequels that did better, and did better by it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see what you're saying because it. Like
Well,
you said,
and just so you know, Trimark only did two.
mm-hmm.
oh yeah,
They only did
Mm-hmm.
two of them, and then the rest went to somebody else. Right.
yeah. But like you said, Jordyn, it is a product of its time because like in that time we have like Wishmaster and we had like
Yeah.
Ernest, Dumb, Scared Straight, and all of those. So it was very a product of its time. But we have a couple of minutes left, and I want to see what you guys would you guys recommend this movie? Would you get somebody really drunk or high and have them watch this movie? What are your final thoughts? Go ahead.
Would you
Blair.
drug somebody to watch this movie?
I absolutely would not. No, I wouldn't wish this on anyone. This is not. Like I said, if I want someone to experience the film watching world, inebriated in some way, we're doing Leprechaun in the Hood. Like that's the one we're doing. So you get maximum enjoyment, maximum pleasure. Like that's the one I'm doing. But no, I most certainly would not recommend this one to anybody. I don't even think it holds up, even if you give it all of the concessions for when it existed. Like, even if you strip away all of that and you say, hey, just forgive it because it's a 90s movie, it still isn't even a good 90s movie. Like, even for 93, it's still pretty bad. Like, so yeah, I would not recommend this to anyone. I regretted watching it as well. So yeah, and I mean, look, I enjoy a good B horror movie. I really do. I enjoy them. But when it comes to horror, be it comedy horror, straight horror, whatever, any subgenre you want, it's very important that you are true to what it is you're trying to do. So if you're trying to be a comedy horror, it only works if you do that. Like, it doesn't work if you want to be a comedy and horror and have them both exist at the same time, but they're not existing together. They're just existing separately. And that's a big flaw. And they're not the only ones to do this. I mean, tons of other movies have done it, but good comedy horror, good horror are ones that know exactly what it is they're trying to do. And this one just doesn't. It's clearly confused, and it leaves the viewer just dumbfounded to where you really don't. All you can say is "fuck you, Lucky Charms." Like, that's it. That's all you can say at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. It kind of reminds me of like Puppet Masters, if you remember those movies. But Puppet Masters were way better and got that comedic timing that this movie was trying to do.
Yeah, because it's predominantly horror. Like, Puppet Masters, like 85% horror, 15% shtick, simply because of the idea that it's a puppet master. Like, the idea of puppets coming to life is just, okay, that's funny in itself. But then it leans into its horror so that the comedy doesn't feel so disjointed, which this one doesn't do. It's all imbalanced.
Yeah. And Jordyn, what are your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I wouldn't show this to my kids at all. There's certain horror films that I would show my kids to scare the shit out of them, and this isn't one of them. Even though this is the one that did scare me, one of the ones that scared me when I was a kid. But, I was too young to understand, right? Like, I was too young to, like, differentiate, like, what was horror and what was comedy, right? Like, you get, like, stuck on one or the other, and I was totally stuck on the horror part. And, this is one where I'd be like, if somebody told you to watch this, don't watch it. Like, skip it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not worth your time. But yeah, I definitely agree with Derrick. It was trying to do 50-50, and it was too much. It was too much of, like, there were some parts where I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. Oh, you're ripping his eyes out. Am I supposed to laugh, or am I supposed to be scared?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're asleep in a crate. Here's Jennifer Aniston. Oh, you got out. Oh, the guy swallowed a coin. Oh, you were running over. You know what I mean? It was too much of, like, I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh or if I'm supposed to be scared. And it was too much of guessing in between, to the point where when it was the last scene and he's, like, disfigured because, he's coming from the well, and he had, the 4-leaf clover shot, and he's like, I want my gold. And I'm like, it's not believable. Like, I just die. Like, die. Don't come back.
Yeah.
Go away. And so it was, I feel like if I were to watch it with somebody now who was, like, the same age as I am, like, they'd be like, the fuck did I just watch? I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry.
Like, you paid for this? What is wrong with you?
Yeah. You were scared of this? Yes, I was. So
yeah, well, I have to agree with both of you. I would never recommend this movie to anybody. For instance, when I had because I used my friend's Amazon and I had her rent it, and I sent over, hey, can you rent the Leprechaun? Her wife was like, the Leprechaun? Really? And I was like, don't worry, I have a thing I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
But
that's funny.
I would never recommend this movie to another person. But there are movies out there that I would. Like The Room, I would have people sit down and watch.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
Not on God's green earth.
Yeah.
But I do want to thank you guys for joining me and talking about this. I thought I was going to be the only one who disliked it, but thank you for agreeing with me. I just want to say thank you for talking about the Leprechaun. Go ahead and let the people know where they can find you out there. Guys, we'll start with you on this one, Derrick.
Yeah, guys, just follow me. You can follow me on Twitter at DRock Comedy. That's DROK Comedy. You can follow me on Letterboxd. So if you want to like see every movie that I watch, I'm trying to do like 300, 400 movies this year. So if you want to see quick reviews and stuff like that, you can follow me on Letterboxd. I think it's just Derrick Murray 83. I think that's my username. I don't remember. But yeah, if you want it, I'll send it to you. But yeah, so Letterboxd, and then check out Nerdbot. I do reviews all the time. Latest review, Megan, is up. Go see it. It's amazing. Way better than Leprechaun. That one understands balance. But yeah, Megan, just tons of reviews on there. So definitely check out Nerdbot and a lot of other good stuff.
Cool. And Derek, go ahead and let them know out there where they can find you.
Oh, you mean Jordyn?
Jordyn. Sorry.
You can be me too, Jordyn. That's fine.
No,
Well,
I can't. Like, nobody can be you, Derek. like I don't want to be confused with you because you're amazing and awesome and you give the best reviews. So
Jordyn.
You can find me on Instagram, CityStars13. I'm gonna hopefully start posting more this year, just so I can get myself out there, do all that wonderful, lovely stuff. I post wonderful stories and funny stuff on there, so you can follow me. Yeah, that's it, I think. Yeah, but follow Derek and Eric and all these wonderful individuals who do much more better things than I do. So.
No, you do great things too. I do nothing right now. I have to get back into it. But like I said, my name is Erric Ramirez. You can find me on all socials at Heartless7. That's HARTL, the number 3, SS7. Everywhere, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Christian Mingle if you want. But please go ahead and join us for our next show, which will be on Wednesday. We'll be doing Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. But until then, I hope you all...
I love that movie. There's no reason for it. I fucking love that movie so much. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm excited to revisit that one for sure. But anyways, that's very excited.
Until then, I hope you guys have a non-horrific day. Bye, guys.